The Emperor's Rebirth, his biological sons, and the Star Child, the God Incarnate, the Emperor's true form, and his Wargear are what we'll talk about in this video. But first, with the Emperor's Transcendence. Enthroned within the life-sustaining Golden Throne, the Emperor's will has transcended his maimed body. The Emperor is now divorced from the day-to-day running of the Imperium. This is left to the Adeptus Terra, who govern in his name. Now his will is interpreted and executed by the High Lords of Terra. His worship is regulated by the Ecclesiarchy, his law enforced by the Adeptus Arbites, his form guarded by the Adeptus Custodes, and his people protected from the horrors of the galaxy and from even themselves by the Inquisition. The Emperor is confined within the Golden Throne, vast biomechanical machinery forming the great Sanctum Imperialis, located deep within the continent-spanning complex on Terra known as the Imperial Palace. There, the Emperor's physical form is sustained by carefully maintained machinery. Physically, the enthroned Emperor of mankind is a ravaged corpse. The last surviving cells in his shattered body are sustained by the Golden Throne, providing an anchor for the Emperor's spirit, which extends across the entire Imperium. The Emperor and the Golden Throne continue to function through the daily sacrifice of thousands of psychers. While his body is sustained, his will endures. His existence is said to be an ending torment, with his every thought enslaved to the task of ruling, guiding, and protecting his race. Ultimately, it is only his will to endure that allows him to survive, as he knows his death would lead to the destruction of the Imperium and leave mankind without the guidance it needs to survive. Only through his power can the Astronomicon beam its guiding light, allowing Imperial ships to navigate the warp in relative safety. The Emperor is not just a beacon for space travel, but it is said to continue to guide humanity through his tarot and through dreams and visions given to selected individuals. It is also believed that he created the warp storm known as the Storm of the Emperor's Wrath during the Age of Apostasy, and that the Emperor's will holds chaos at bay. Were it not for his unceasing struggle, the chaos of the warp would flood the material realm with madness and horror, causing untold destruction. In addition, the Emperor's presence on the Golden Throne keeps the ruptured webway portal beneath the Imperial Palace in check. Should it open again, Terra would become flooded by demons. In addition to these already profound powers, the Emperor is capable of stopping time for undetermined lengths and guiding his servants through manipulation of his tarot and sheer influence. Shortly before his own death, Conrad Kerr spoke to a corpse puppet of the Emperor that he had created. Shockingly, the grotesque work of art began speaking back and shone with blinding light. The voice stated that Kerrs had acted as intended, and like all the Primarchs had been built for a specific purpose, but chaos had interfered with his plans in the end. At the same time, the voice scolded Kerrs for believing that fate was absolute, and instead blamed the Primarch's own choices for what soon befell him. The conversation sent Kerrs into a frenzy, and he tore the corpse puppet to pieces, and it is unknown if this was a mere hallucination or indeed the actual voice of the Emperor. One of the few conversations between an Imperial subject and the immobilized Emperor occurred at the end of the 41st millennium. Following the Terran Crusade, the reborn Robot Guilliman stood before the Golden Throne and communed with the Emperor. The Primarch was disturbed by what had become of his father's mental state. He felt that the Emperor had lost all pretenses of humanity and gave off an overwhelming sense of coldness. The Emperor greeted Guilliman with interest, but as a creator with a long-lost soul, not as a father would with his son. Guilliman feared that the centuries of suffering had stripped away whatever warmth and humanity he once had. What exactly transpired in the throne room is unclear, with both Guilliman and Captain General Trajan Valorous having no memory of what exactly transpired. Apparently, during the conversation, the Emperor called Guilliman both a tool and his son, and the last hope to save mankind. He assaulted Guilliman's mind with an overload of information and dark truths of the galaxy before going silent once more. During the Plague Wars, the Emperor would seemingly intervene through militant apostolic Matthew in order to both destroy a portion of the cauldron of Nurgle on Lax as well as resurrect Guilliman, who had been slain by Mortarion via the disease known as the God Blight. Channeling his power through Guilliman, the Emperor unleashed a mighty blow through the Immaterium, which damaged the Garden of Nurgle and the Plague God directly. Before dying, Matthew came to believe that the Great Rift was now empowering the Emperor, who was close to reawakening. Guilliman seemed to believe the priest, and began to dabble with Belisarius' call on ideas on how to bring back his father. About the Emperor's awaited rebirth, there are two conflicting theories that have been put forward concerning the possible rebirth of the Emperor. At worst, these theories could be considered complete fabrication brought about by Tzeentchian cultists and the lies of chaos as the Inquisition has decreed. First is the Star Child theory, which has two aspects. The first is that the Emperor's soul is currently forming as a new entity called the Star Child in the warp, and that he will be reborn. A theory similar to the belief surrounding the potential Elder God Enid. And the second is that the Emperor had fathered children. After the defeat of Horus, most of the Emperor's soul is said to have dispersed from his body, merging into the warp in much the same way as that of the shamans so many millennia before. It is believed that the Emperor, while apparently designed and empowered by the shamans to live forever, also possesses the ability to reincarnate, and that this would be his eventual goal. Avoiding discovery by the Chaos powers, it is believed that the Emperor was able to plant the seed of his reincarnation, a potential new soul awaiting birth, the Star Child. However, it is also believed that this new soul cannot be born while the Emperor is still tied to the Golden Throne, no matter how weak. Along with this, the Emperor is said to have had children. Although a man of godlike powers, the Emperor was still a man, and throughout the many millennia of his life on Terra had fathered many children. A few of their descendants had inherited some of the Emperor's power, including agelessness, and survived into the age of the Imperium. They are known as Sensei, and they have a unique nature and relationship with the warp which makes them invisible to psychic senses, even to those of the Emperor. The ultimate goal of the Sensei is to attain apotheosis with the Star Child. There is another possibility given for the Emperor's resurrection. A secret society that call themselves the Illuminati have learned from the Elder's Black Library many truths of chaos as well as about the Sensei and the fall of the Elder. They realize the Emperor cannot survive in his current state forever, and eventually he will fail, and without the Emperor, mankind will fall to chaos like the Elder. Such an event would create a fifth Chaos God and create another Eye of Terror, one which would span the entire Imperium. They seek to prevent this by bringing about the rebirth of the Emperor. This involves gathering together the Sensei, protecting them from the Inquisition, preparing them for what they claim is the final war with Chaos. In truth, they ultimately plan to sacrifice the Sensei to the Emperor in the same way so many Psykers have been consumed by the Emperor. The Emperor will be renewed, reborn as the Sensei Emperor to again lead his race in person. The second theory is the God Incarnate, a sub-faction of the Puritan faction of the Inquisition called Thurianism, believe that the Emperor's essence in the warp may be transferred to a physical vessel, one deemed a divine avatar. Now, how did the Emperor look like? What is his true form? Before he was trapped atop the Golden Throne, the Emperor could appear to any individual however he wanted, each person perceiving him differently. The Emperor has appeared as male or female or neither, as an elderly man or a child, as a peasant, king, magician, and a fool. None has ever seen his true face. To most, and in most depictions of him, the Emperor appears as a giant of a man, clad in golden armor with long brown hair, a square jaw, and a stern behavior. He often has an angelic halo surrounding his head. This form was a golden giant that was meant to appeal to the warrior instincts of the Primarchs and inspire the teeming masses of the Imperium to fight for him. According to Malkador, the Emperor disliked this form and sought to abandon it upon leaving the Great Crusade. When he appeared to Ezekiel Sedain prior to the Unification Wars, he appeared as a man in rich clothes. His hair was brown, long, and clean. The Emperor's face was both youthful and old. His eyes were blessed brown and deeper than time. When speaking to Ezekiel, Ezekiel states that he looks different than when he appeared to the people. The Emperor states that he does change his appearance sometimes, but claimed that this appearance to Ezekiel was truthful. When he speaks to Belisarius Cole through Ezekiel's memory, he appeared unremarkable. He had his hair tied back. The Emperor wore a scientist's lab coat, and that he was not tall yet not short. He was handsome, but not outrageously so. He was slight, but not thin. During the Unification Wars on Terra, the Emperor appeared to Uriah Ulthair, the priest of the Church of the Lightning Stone, as first appearing as a tall man with a remarkably unremarkable face that was stern but not kind, and seemed at odds with his martial bearing. His skin was leathery and tanned, his hair dark and pulled back into a short scalp lock, then presented himself as towering with an ebony face, long dark hair, clad in his golden power armor and radiating light bright enough to illuminate the darkened interior of the church. When Arkan Land met the Emperor at one of his labs on Terra during the Great Crusade, Arkan saw the Emperor as a scientist, clad as any scientist might be clad, in a protective hazard suit suitable for work in sterile and hostile conditions and a surgical mask. When Corvus Corax first met the Emperor appeared to be unremarkable. His height and build were both average. He has dark hair, moderately tanned skin. His eyes were indistinct, a mixture of blue, green, grey and brown, with a wisdom, kindness and antiquity that reached into Corvus's soul. He was dressed in an adorned white linen robe and wearing a golden necklace with a pendant depicting an eagle with outspread wings and a lightning bolt held in its talons. When Lionel Johnson sees the Emperor, he appears as a hooded figure armored in emerald plate, inscrutable with gilt and filigree and shrouded in robes of gold, wreathed in obscuring light. The Lion feels that this appearance is the truth. When he first appeared before Leman Russ, the Emperor appeared as a great warrior, clad in cloaks and runes. He was fond of games and challenges, and bested Russ in combat but failed in drinking and eating contests. When he first appeared before Vulcan, the Emperor took the form of a humble pale man in outlandish clothing, known as the Outlander. During the war in the Webway, when the Emperor appeared on the field of battle, he appeared as one born in the wild lands of ancient Eurasia. His skin was a Terran blend of bronze and burned umber. His eyes were described as darker than his skin, his hair darker than his other features. His hair was pulled back with a single golden circlet, clad in his golden armor, more ancient and advanced than even the Custodes battle plate, a flowing red cloak, armed with his ornate bolter and his sword. Due to their blank nature, the Sisters of Silence see none of the splendor of the Emperor. During the war within the Webway, the Sister of Silence Kyria Kasserin saw the Emperor for what he truly was, a simple man, no more or less, in perpetual agony upon the golden throne, his mouth open in a silent scream, the bane of his efforts seeming to age his ageless face. While he wore his golden armor, he had no psychic corona and no golden halo. Now about the Emperor's weapons and wargear. The one true armor is a suit of power armor commonly seen worn by the Emperor during the Great Crusade and the Horus Heresy. After his wounding by Horus during the Siege of Terra, it is said that the Emperor's armor was removed and melted down at his own order to create badges to honor the Imperial Fist's Terminators that had fought beside him. Pieces of the armor are placed inside the Crux Terminatus worn by an especially honored Space Marine Terminators. Meanwhile, all the Grey Knight's Cruxes contain a shard of the armor. The right gauntlet of the one true armor is currently in possession of the Dark Angels, who used it to create thousands of Crux Terminatus badges. The Emperor's sword, created by the Emperor using both his mastery of science and warpcraft. The sword is a curse to the forces of chaos, and only the most powerful of demons can resist being destroyed by its mere touch. The sword is capable of giving a demon a true death, rather than simply banishing them to the warp. After the Emperor was wounded by Horus on the Vengeful Spirit, the sword was placed within its scabbard and rested upon one of the Emperor's knees for 10 millennia, until the beginning of the 13th Black Crusade, when Belisarius Cole gave the weapon to the resurrected Primarch Rupert Guilliman. The Emperor's Lightning Claw, an unnamed lightning claw that was usually seen on the Emperor's left hand during the Great Crusade and Horus Heresy, and is unknown what ultimately became of the weapon. The Emperor's Bolter was an unnamed bolt gun which was a personal weapon of the Emperor, one of the very first bolt guns. It was a progenitor to all of its kind. The weapon was black and bronze, and was not a relic of the Dark Age of technology, but rather one of the Emperor's own inventions. Also, it is unknown what became of the weapon. The Emperor's shield was once the personal shield of the Emperor, but is now being wielded by the reborn Primarch Lionel Johnson in M42. The Apollonian Spear, crafted alongside its sister, the Dionysian Spear, by the Emperor's own hand during the Age of Strife, wielded for a time by the Emperor himself, and was gifted to Constantine Valdor when he became chief custodian of the Legio Custodes. The Apollonian Spear grants truths to the wielder from those it cuts. The spear's effect even works on inanimate objects, as Valdor used it to stab the floor of the Vengeful Spirit in order to confirm his location. After the Horus Heresy and the disappearance of Valdor, the Apollonian Spear was put into storage by the Custodes and treated as a relic. Lastly, the Dionysian Spear, and sometimes known as the Wolf Spear or its hidden name, Wargear, known to has the ability to illuminate those it pierces, revealing to them some aspect of the truth. The weapon was gifted to Leman Russ in the aftermath of the dreaded Wheel of Fire campaign, when 1/3 of the Space Wolves Legion was destroyed by orcs, but he was made uneasy by the spear's presence and never took it with him into battle. He would often lose it on battlefields or forget it in conference chambers, and he carried it only to please the Emperor. Despite his attempts to part with the weapon, it would always ultimately return to his side. While on Fenris, Russ saw a vision of himself that revealed the nature of the spear, and he pierced himself with it, revealing to him the truth regarding the nature of the Primarchs. Afterward, Russ became fonder of the weapon and used it in battle. Later, during the duel between Horus and Leman Russ at the Battle of Trizolian, Russ used the spear to not only badly wound the War Master, but also restore a measure of his sanity and former glory, washing away much of the corruption that had come to plague him on Malak. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button, leave a comment for the algorithm, and make sure to subscribe to stay tuned for more.